Sadika. Hello and welcome to Tishidoko. You may know Canada is a country that has a lot of services which its citizens and residents have access to, like public health care, primary and secondary education, and many others. So today we're going to be talking about the various taxes in Canada that we all pay that help fund these public services.
Klik subscribe ให้พวกเราด้วยนะคะ
Before we do that, make sure to turn on notifications, hit the like button, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any content from us. So what are all the taxes we pay in Canada to fund our public services? We have another video specifically about income tax and how that helps fund our tax system and our public services. But there are a number of other taxes we do pay in Canada, whether it be calling a service to have something fixed, paying for stuff at a convenience store, filling up gas, all these things, going out to a restaurant meal, include a tax of some kind. Depending on where you live in the country or where you're thinking of moving to, the taxes work similarly across the country, but do have slightly different rates depending on the province you are in. So the most common tax that most people pay every day or at least weekly are what's known as goods and services taxes. And these taxes are across the country in each province. In Saskatchewan, for instance, we have a PST and a GST. And that is a provincial sales tax and a government sales tax, which is the federal government. These taxes are applied to nearly every purchase you would make. Things like paying an electrician or paying your phone bill, buying items at a convenience store, buying shoes, clothing. Generally, all these things, you get your final price, you go to pay, and a goods and services tax, so PST, GST, will be added to the total amount of what you pay regardless of where you're paying. This is completely normal and it occurs all across the country. Depending on the province you are in, the taxation rate of PST provincially will be different. Federally, it is always 5% currently, and the only other difference is some provinces have HST, and what this is known as is harmonized sales tax. And rather than having a specific rate for PST, they are blended together, PST, GST, into HST. And roughly across the country, it ranges from about 9% combined for the two, to 13-14%. The only difference is Alberta does not have a provincial sales tax, so it only has federal GST of 5% added to each purchase. A couple other things to note, though they're not really taxes. One big one to call out, especially on a cell phone bill, is a 911 emergency fee charge. So you have your monthly plan, you know the price of your plan. Not only will, the sales tax be added on at the end, but every month you do pay a small fee, usually around $1 to $2, for a 911 emergency fee. And it's just to maintain our emergency services across the country. Another thing to call out on PST, GST, HST is that across the country, these are not charged on grocery items. So if you're going to the grocery store, you're buying, fresh meat, vegetables, fruit, grains, pasta, anything like that, the sales tax is not charged on that. However, it will be charged on things like junk food, whether it's chips or pretzels or, soda pop. These types of things do have goods and services tax added to them at the end bill. A couple other items that sort of have a similar goods and services tax, but are taxed generally across the country at special rates, are alcohol and tobacco products. And again, there is a federal national rate on these products, but also, and each province has the ability to tax these items separately as well. So it will vary if you're traveling around and say you go to a liquor store and you buy, alcohol in BC versus Alberta. those are going to be taxed at different rates, even if it's the same brand. So just so you know, if you are traveling, you see different prices on that item that you're used to buying, that's completely normal depending on the province you're in. The reason our country chooses to tax things like alcohol and tobacco at higher, rates is because, people generally still buy these items. And also, it's meant to help discourage something that maybe you don't want to participate in all the time. Another thing to call out as well, restaurant meals, just like you're paying for an item at a convenience store, restaurant meals, similar. You do have the goods and services tax added on. So if you order food at the restaurant, the normal GST, PST apply. And then if you order, a beer or a glass of wine with your meal as well, the alcohol tax in that province will also apply to that beverage, and then the goods and services taxes apply to the meal amount. Similar to alcohol, the same is true across the country for tobacco and nicotine products, as well as cannabis, which is legal in Canada. So these items all have their own taxes depending on the province, and again, for the exact same reason as the alcohol. Another thing to call out in relation to PST, GST, HST is, again, depending on the province and the rates you're paying, and also depending on your income levels if you are working in Canada, or even if you're a student in this case and maybe not working, is that if you do file your income tax, you could be eligible, depending on your income level, if it's, under a certain amount, for a quarterly PST, HST rebate. And this is something that the federal government and different provincial governments send back to you on a quarterly basis to compensate for having lower income levels. Another tax, which a lot of newcomers maybe won't face up front, is what's known as property taxes. And these are specifically for people who own their homes, whether it's an apartment, a townhouse, a house. Every owner in every city across Canada will pay some form of property tax. And this is not only dependent on the province, but it's specifically dependent on the city or town where you live. The municipal government of that city chooses the property tax rate for that city. So again, as coming over as a renter, generally those costs are just built into your monthly rent, because the owner would be paying that kind of in the background to the city. So again, property taxes, the reasons our governments charge them, just like nationally, provincially, we pay taxes to fund services. Cities and towns charge property taxes as a way to help fund city infrastructure and, public services specific to that city or town. Another tax that's charged across the country, though you don't necessarily see it all the time, is our national carbon tax. And the carbon tax is implemented by our federal government to put a price on the emissions of fossil fuels. So whether it's burning coal for electricity, gasoline, natural gas for power, these things, burn fossil fuels and emit carbon dioxide. And our government has chosen to put a price on that via the carbon tax. When you see our gas prices across the country, for instance, if filling a car up with gas or a vehicle up with gas, you don't necessarily see that carbon tax charged. You might, if you look at your receipt in detail, but that price is built right into the price you see at the gasoline stations. The other place you'll see the federal carbon charge, depending on the province you live, is on any heating or electricity bills, depending on how that heat or electricity is generated. It will be its own separate tax in addition to PST and GST, HST, on those utility bills for electricity or heat. We mentioned income tax a couple of times and benefits that may result from filing income tax. We have a whole separate video on income taxes you're free to check out, but really just as a reminder, income tax is exactly how it sounds. It's a taxable amount on the income you earn in Canada. And finally, maybe one to call out that is, you don't experience all the time, but probably important to think about if you are a newcomer to Canada, is the idea of import taxes, whether it be customs and duty fees. Because, if family members or friends are shipping you stuff from abroad, depending on the value of those items that are declared, the government can actually tax those items coming into the country over a certain value. So a lot of the times it's good to know, if you are relocating here permanently and you are having your stuff shipped to you, often if your family or your friends declare this in some sort of way and make note of it, specifically on the package or on the declaration form, often the government will forgive these taxes because you are relocating and this is your personal stuff. It's not like you're buying stuff overseas to sell. So that's one important thing to know to help maybe minimize some of those taxes if anything's shipped to you. Another thing to know is, for instance, if you're shopping online from maybe a shop in the United States that doesn't have a location in Canada, depending on the goods you're buying, specifically footwear, clothing, these types of things Canada and the US don't have a kind of a tax-free trade agreement for. So you are generally charged more in duty customs fees to have these items purchased and then shipped from the US. So even though you don't pay them at the time of purchase, in order to actually receive those items through delivery, you will pay extra taxes. Now, if you are shopping from a US company that has locations in Canada, you're fine, because if it ships within country, you aren't charged those additional taxes. The same is true for other countries, just depending on the trade agreements Canada has with various countries around the world. This is a brief overview of the most common taxes in Canada and ones you may be paying daily, weekly, or less often, but likely will have an impact on you when moving here. And really, there's no way to avoid paying most of these taxes. They're just included in everyday transactions. Thank you so much for watching, for all the support. We really hope you enjoy these videos, and let us know in the comments if you have any questions or other ideas for content. Always glad to hear from you. Thanks again. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video if you know anyone interested in this type of content. See you next video. Sadi Cup. Bye.